You've been MP for, what, 18 years now?
I was elected for the first time in 1997, but first stood in this area in Parliament in 1992.
Great. And what drew you to the Liberal Democrats?
I got involved as a student at Cultural College. The SDP was being formed, that's the Social Democrats, people like Shirley Williams and their take on internationalism, social justice, commitment to shared defence through NATO, things like that really were things that inspired me back in the 1980s. I got involved as a volunteer, and one thing has led to another.
Yeah, and how do you think the party has changed over that time, and what do you think is still sort of relevant about it?
Well, I think at its heart, the party that the SDP became when it merged with the Liberal Party to form the Liberal Democrats is at heart a party of pluralism, of tolerance, a party committed to diversity and tolerance. And I think those are really important values in our society today.
Yeah. So this time in 2010, in fact I think it was about this day in 2010, the Liberal Democrats were polling at about 30%. And today's poll of polls I think puts you at about 9%. What do you think's happened, and what do you think can sort of be done about that before May the 7th?
Well, I don't think either poll is particularly accurate in terms of what it suggests. And the poll in 2010 was a sort of a bubble that was inflated by the hype that surrounded the leadership debates and the novelty that people suddenly had woken up to Mick Clegg. And today, I think it's as much to do with the fact that our support is not evenly spread across the country. It's concentrated. It's concentrated in the places where we have members of Parliament, where we run local authorities, and where we have track records and a promise of action as well as delivery.
Yeah, I mean that must be, I suppose the 2010 result must have been an interesting one for you, because obviously the share of the vote went up but the number of MPs went down, if I'm not mistaken, so that's something I suppose the voting system didn't necessarily work in your favour.
No, I think in 2010 we came out pretty even in the end. I think what we're likely to see this time is the voting system working very strongly in our favour, because under a first past the post voting system, if your support is consolidated in a few places, you're more likely to be successful in those places. One of the difficulties that parties like UKIP have, their support is very evenly distributed, so they might affect the result of elections, but they may not actually get many MPs elected.
Yeah. So would you say that overall being a party of government has been worth it?
I mean, being a party of government was about providing a stable government to do some pretty difficult things over the last 5 years. You know, the coward's way out would have been in 2010 to say, no, we're not going to have any part to do with being in government, we're not going to be involved in taking any difficult decisions, we'll just stand on the sidelines and jeer. And I think I know what the British public would be saying to me on the doorsteps now. If we'd done that, they would have been decidedly unimpressed. And doing the right thing sometimes isn't always doing the popular thing.
Yeah. So what is the message that you're getting on the doorstep at the moment?
People like the work I do as a constituency MP. We've just been out on the school gate over in North Sutton, and people coming up to me saying thank you very much for doing such and such. Really good feedback, actually. People like having a Liberal Democrat MP. They like having me as their local MP, and they also appreciate the things I've been doing nationally, particularly on care, on mental health, on making sure that older people get a fair deal.
Great. I was sort of running the numbers just yesterday actually, and diversity is a real issue in the Liberal Democrats, certainly in the parliamentary party. I mean, 12% women, I think that's worse than the Conservatives, which I was quite shocked about. Again, no sort of black ethnic minority representation in the House of Parliament. Why do you think that is, and what do you think can be done about that?
Well, it's partly a product of when MPs have been elected at various points. So each constituency makes its selection decisions. And the thing about being a Liberal Democrat is that it's not really a pretty good move if you're looking for a career in politics. People sort of have been critical of the Liberal Democrats who are going into government, but actually most of us weren't even certain we'd be elected as MPs in the first place. So we are working very hard on issues around diversity. In fact, a number of the MPs that are stepping down at this general election, about 6 or 7 of them, are being succeeded. If the electorate decide, by women. So the diversity of the parliamentary party after the election will look very different, and I think a lot better than it has done up until now.
Yeah, great. Personal attributes do you think have made you a good MP over the past 18 years?
I think often people think being a good MP is all about broadcasting, about talking to people. It's actually much more about listening to people. The thing I enjoy most about the job is actually the constituency surgeries that I hold when people come to talk to me about their individual problems. You can't solve and work with people to solve their problems unless you're good at listening. So good listening skills, good problem solving skills, and a reasonable amount of empathy. Those are the key things I think you need to have to be an MP that lasts, an MP that people have some connection with.
And I suppose you touched on some of these points just then, but what really motivates you? What drives you?
Well, the thing I care about most is the quality and care that older people get in this country. It's been pretty shabby for many years in many cases. I've worked very hard to improve the situation in this country. We've got a new law that I was involved in crafting over the last few years, which I think will make a really big difference over the next few years. And the thing that sort of motivates me most is, in the end, it's about service. It's about service to the people who vote for me, and indeed the people who don't vote for me, because I'm their MP as well.
And I suppose since you've been, again, 18 years you've been the MP in Sutton and Cheam. What would you say was your biggest weakness when you started, and how have you sort of overcome it?
Well, when you start, you don't necessarily have any understanding of what the job is going to entail in terms of the Westminster side of it. I didn't spend a great deal of time boning up on parliamentary procedure. I didn't spend a great deal of time on polishing my public speaking. Those were not the sort of things that I thought were important. Whether they were weaknesses, I mean, for some, those are particularly important attributes to their parliamentary careers. I've never seen them as being the most important thing, but I dare say some would see them as weaknesses.
Very good. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you.